The time is now upon us where we were granted Berserk Chapter 372 about a week ago. I didn't do a review on it just because I didn't know if I wanted to tackle this like I usually do, where I break down everything that happens in the chapter, or if I want to just give my overall thoughts on it and my my more complicated thoughts on the series in general. And I decided to do the second one. So this is going to be a little less more of a 372 breakdown, walkthrough, whatever, and more of an overview, my opinion on the overview itself, and my thoughts on where Berserk is going. So if you're here for the breakdown, walkthrough aspect of it, it's still here, but it's probably going to be overshadowed by complaining, rambling, however you want to phrase it, that. So the chapter itself, I liked it. In a nutshell, we find out and we see what happened to Casca after Griffith whisked her away. She has seemingly been, I don't want to say mind-controlled, more mind-malleabled. So her brain has been twisted to believe things that aren't true. We see her referred to as Milady, and we see all these women not flaunting over her, but spoiling her, making her seem like royalty. And in my opinion, it seems like Griffith is trying to sew this web that is making Casca comfortable enough to not be an issue, which was exactly what a lot thought was going to happen. He's trying to mitigate Casca to also mitigate Midnight or Moonlight Boy. So if she's in Falconia doing her own thing, then whenever Moonlight Boy comes out, he's not going to wander away. He'll stay in the capital. But we see that when she sees the Band of the Hawk, she cries. And we see multiple times that, whether it be the very beginning of the chapter in which she's having a dream and she doesn't want to leave Guts, or towards the end where, again, she says that she can't leave Guts, we see that there are still fragments of that. And we see that she still remembers the Black Swordsman party with Isidro, Farnese, Serpico, Shirkei. So it's interesting to see that at least a little bit of her isn't completely under Griffith's control, which I don't think anyone expected. In my opinion, this was kind of a predictable way that this was going to go, but it wasn't the way it was going to go. Like, it was going to happen, but there were ways it was going to happen. And it's going one of the better ways. Casca isn't just going to sit there in Falconia and wait for Guts to come rescue her. She seems like she's actually going on the offensive at least a little bit. We see that she chopped the guy's arm off when she became semi-lucid. She threw a vase. She was fighting. And then she was subdued. So, and then at the end of the chapter, we see that Griffith and all his apostles are reflecting on Casca just being there. So he asks Irvine what's happening, or it's Locust asking, I can't really tell. But Irvine is telling Griffith that the bird now dozes peacefully in her cage. Her flight is over. So I'm wondering if this means that she is, like, that little bit of resistance that she had is it. That is all she's going to have. Or if that flight is just the beginning. If she'll do this routinely. If every so often she'll break out of this mind palace that Griffith has put her in, and she'll become aware. It'll be interesting to see how that goes, at least. But one thing that I do want to comment on in the chapter, it's not going to the rambling part yet, is Zod. At the end of the chapter, we see him separated from the rest of the apostles. His back is turned to them. He's not hiding, but he's behind a pillar. And I saw a tweet that I think summed it up perfectly. Griffith took away Guts' only reason to fight in Casca. That means that Zod has no reason to fight Guts anymore. Guts isn't going to fight. Guts has no reason to go on the offensive. Unless after he has his breakdown that he's having on the boat, maybe the party will get him back up and they're going to set out for Falconia. But to Zod, I don't think it's a realistic thought that Guts is going to come to Falconia and try to fight Griffith, fight the apostles, and get Casca back. Because we have to remember, it's Irvine, Locust, Grunbeld, and Zod are the 4 main apostles. We still have other ones. We still have Roxas. We still have all the apostles that Griffith has in the army. So Guts just showing up isn't going to work. His brand is going to bleed. And it'll bleed hard because of all the apostles. There's a God Hand member here. But that brings me to another thing, is Casca's brand seems to have somehow been mitigated. Either mitigated or she's being kept so far away from Griffith that it's not activating. But I always kind of held this belief that as Falconia is this construct of astral proportions, but it was constructed out of the energy of a God Hand member, that it wouldn't just be, it would be radiating that God Hand energy. I don't know why, that's just what I thought. Because I feel like you walk into Falconia and everyone says that it just feels safe. Whether that be just the buildings itself makes it feel secure, or some kind of like warm wrap around it. But that wrap is cloaked in darkness. So, the last bit of the chapter that I want to talk about is the last few panels, in which Griffith points everyone in the direction of the east. What's in the east? I have no idea. If I had to venture a guess, Griffith is going to expand his kingdom to the east, similar to how Father from Fullmetal Alchemist expanded Xerxes, or expanded Amestris, so that he had all this land for his big plan. If that's what Griffith's play is, then he could very easily have his kingdom over this huge amount of area, where everyone in that area worships him, is willing to die for him, and then he sacrifices them. Or some other play with the Baelit. Because Griffith has technically had 2 sacrifices for him. He had the Band of the Hawk back in the Eclipse, and then he had the Tower of Conviction, which acted as a sacrifice to bring him into the real world. So if we think about it, this big sacrifice could be bringing all the God Hand to Earth. Because if Griffith is expanding his kingdom this big, he could easily sacrifice everyone and bring the God Hand down to rain hell on Earth. Because we don't know what their play is. We've always just kind of assumed it's chaos, or it's just disaster for the sake of disaster. They could have some more complicated idea, but to us, it's irrelevant. We know that whatever they are planning isn't good. Guts is arguably on the better side. He's just trying to mitigate damage that Griffith has done. He tried to get Casca back mentally, and now if he is going to try to beat Griffith, he might have to kiss the country of Midland goodbye. Because if Griffith wraps his little talons around what once was Midland, and maybe he takes over what the Kushan had, and maybe he takes over here and there and here and there, then he has this massive kingdom, which, like I said, he could possibly just sacrifice at a whim. And that's terrifying, because that is thousands, if not millions of lives that Griffith just has. We saw how powerful he got with 150 to 250 people with the Band of the Hawk. Unless there was actually a concrete number out there of how many people he was sacrificed. But we see how strong he got off of a relatively small batch of people. Imagine a kingdom. What that could do. Imagine multiple kingdoms. Imagine most of the main continent of the land of Berserk. That's insane. Because also the Tower of Conviction was kind of not a massive sacrifice. There was a lot of pain and suffering and misery going on. But over a full kingdom, that's going to be insane. Because if we think about it, Griffith could have brought, when Skull Knight used the slash of the Sword of Actuation, and Griffith merged the astral planes, and he brought dragons and trolls, he could have the plan that he's introducing the negative force into the world, in the dragons, and the trolls, and the golems, and all that shit. Then what if his play is to make himself feel, or to make himself seem like the savior to humanity? Look at Lord Griffith. He's saving us from all this terrible shit. But there's still suffering going on. Because he can't just eradicate them. They're still going to be popping up here and there. He can't unmerge the worlds. That's what I think the Ganishka tree kind of represents. That we are to a point where there is no going back astral-wise. Every astral thing is here now. It is going to stay. So he could be planning on using the misery caused by the astral beings, like I said, the dragons, just for example, and using that to fuel a mass sacrifice in which that brings down the God Hand. And he could willingly introduce anarchy into his kingdom. Say his plan could be for Guts to come in. His plan could be for Guts to come in and stage Griffith being killed. Because now we know Griffith cannot be killed by Guts. At least not as Guts is now. Not as the Dragon Slayer is now. But if Guts just shows up and attacks Griffith, and Griffith stages his death, then that's going to cause a misery to fall over the kingdom, offering them the perfect opportunity to commit a sacrifice of everyone. Because don't get me wrong, Griffith dying won't be an instantly televised thing to everyone, but it can be. We saw with the dream that everyone had that Griffith is capable of basically at everyone in a Discord server. And that's terrifying. Because if this is true, if his plan is to spread some sort of disastrous knowledge to the people and make their spirit plummet, then the sacrifice could happen. That's all going off the logic that the sacrifice is what the play is. And I got all that off of them saying the West or the East. And that's a lot. But next chapter comes out May 25th. I'll make a review there. But my ramble, if the fucking theory wasn't a ramble enough. The series itself. We know that, at least from our perspective, Guts is the main character. Meaning Guts is debatably in the right. And given what Griffith has done, we as viewers are inclined to see it the same. But the entire point of Berserk is that the guy who everyone thinks would be the villain is the hero. And vice versa. So, the one thing I saw floating around a lot, which I want to spend at least a little bit of time debunking, is Guts is one of the God Hand come to Guts, probably Celan because she has had the most interaction with him, and offers him a choice of a sacrifice, because he is at his lowest point now. After the eclipse, he was down, don't get me wrong, but now he has lost his only beacon of light, at least in his eyes, because there are still Serpico, Farnese, Casca's kind of gone, Shirke, Isidro, they are still there. So is Puck, but we have to consider that Guts is already marked. And if Griffith did do some sort of magic onto Casca's brand to make her not vulnerable to the effects, because she's also not getting hunted. The other aspect of the brand, other than being an apostle detector or a negative detector, is it attracts them to you. So, there are no apostles bursting through the walls and killing her. Whether it be through some, widespread knowledge that Griffith will kill you if you do, or maybe they can't. Maybe Griffith legitimately just deactivated her brand and she is effectively no longer a sacrifice, meaning she doesn't suffer from the negative effects of it. Then Guts is, on the other hand, he's going to be suffering from the effects massive, especially if he sacrifices the Black Swordsman party to become an apostle to fight Griffith, is what people think. Because that is going to mean he is a sacrifice who has committed a sacrifice. I don't even know if that's technically allowed in the world of Berserk. We know that you are allowed to double sacrifice, but you're not allowed to double sacrifice a sacrifice. So, back in Black Swordsman, the Slug Count couldn't sacrifice Guts for two reasons. He didn't care about him, and Guts was already someone else's sacrifice. So, I'm wondering if Guts committing a sacrifice is possible because that doesn't technically break the rule. It's him having his own sacrifices and not him being the sacrifice. But then we also have to think Guts has come a long way character-wise, where I personally don't think he would be willing to do that. But we are also not looking at the Guts we've known for how long. We're looking at a broken man. So everything is kind of up in the air. That's what this entire video has been about. It's just we know next to nothing about what's going to happen next. We can make our own theories, like what's happening with Skull Knight. Did he get got when the astral realm on Elfhelm got separated? When Danan did it? Or is he still here because we see Puck is still here and he was here before the merging, and Skull Knight was here because he was here before the merging. So what's Skull Knight going to do? Is Skull Knight going to come to Guts and offer him a play or an idea? Or is Skull Knight going to be a bigger player farther in and we don't need to worry about where he is right now? Is Skull Knight cooking up his own plans right now? Is Skull Knight kind of just giving up? I doubt it. Skull Knight doesn't seem like the kind of guy to do that. If anything, I think Skull Knight would be the kind of guy to be livid that Griffith showed up to the one sanctuary where everyone could just be, and he destroyed it. But Skull Knight doesn't give a shit about, like, Guts and Casca living peaceful lives. He gives a shit that Griffith destroyed the tomb of his beloved. I feel like he would hold that personal if he is the remnant of a grudge that he has said he is. Then the remnant of a grudge should also have a grudge against getting the tomb of his beloved destroyed. But that's been my ranting and raving about this chapter. I made it seem like it was going to be some like long, big rant, but I don't know. I went off on a game chat while me and a few of my friends were playing about how Studio Gaga has changed the art style. And I used the series Duranki as the perfect example, because that was their series to learn how to emulate Miura's style. And they didn't get enough time with Duranki, so they were kind of just thrown headlong into Berserk. So I had the idea with my friend that maybe Studio Gaga should have done Duranki more before moving into Berserk. Put Berserk on the shelf. Let everyone know we're not done with it. We are going to come back to it. But we're going to come back to it when we believe we have what it takes. But, like I always say, Studio Gaga has done more in this one chapter than I will ever be able to do in my life. They are talented. It just comes down to emulation. And whether they can emulate Miura's style well or not is the big question. So far, they've made changes, but you can still tell who most people are. So, I'm excited to see where this series goes, obviously. I always say that. But yeah, I know I kind of glossed over everything that happened in the chapter. Like I said, but it's interesting now that we are getting a, how do I phrase it? An iconic color for Casca. Because if you think about it, Guts' color has always been black. Since the Black Swordsman, that has been his color. In Golden Age, his color was more so red, because that's what most of the time his cape was portrayed as being. Griffith has always been white or a light blue. So having Casca's be this dark red, this crimson, is telling. Because crimson is obviously a darker form of red. Red is Guts' color from Golden Age, black is his current color. Crimson is somewhere in the middle. There is not a hint of Griffith's color in this. If they wanted to, they could have pushed a purple. But they didn't. It's red, which I think, again, is very telling of where Casca is going to end up. She isn't going to be this pulled in two directions character. She is with Guts. Her mentality is still with Guts. Her allegiances still lie with Guts. Sure, she may have some residual feelings about Griffith, because those will never go away. Especially not after what happened at the Eclipse. Just like the feelings that Guts has for him will never fully go away. They might mitigate, but they will never go fully away. But it's nice to see that maybe Casca is a little bit more closely tied to Guts currently than we might have thought. Because, like I said, the crimson being the color between his golden age and his current. The color that you could say was Guts at the eclipse, given that that is where golden age and black swordsman era Guts meet. And obviously crimson blood, the crimson Bailet, it all comes back to the eclipse. Casca is the incarnation of the eclipse. She suffered debatably the most, if not second to Guts. She didn't get to properly deal with what happened because of the fact that her brain just shut down. And the crimson dress, the vibrant crimson dress, the only other time I think we have ever heard crimson used definitively as a color is with the crimson Bailet. So she is currently being, I guess portrayed would be the right way to say it. She's currently being portrayed as the very thing that took that away from her. Everything that she had was taken away from her by the crimson Bailet and by Griffith. And now with the crimson dress, I think Griffith is knowingly playing into that. I don't know. Like I always say, I am an idiot. I don't know anything about the series. I've read it. I've read all 372 chapters. But still. And that counts the lost chapter. I did read that too. But this series has always gone twisting and turning that we just don't know how it's going to go. So, that's my opinion on how this chapter is. My full, unbridled opinion on everything about this chapter, whether it be the art, how it's emulating Miura's style, but it's not trying to copy it, which I think is for the best. They have found their own art style. How I think the story might play out, it might not. I didn't really offer a set thing of what I think is going to happen. I kind of did. But the expanding to the east, Griffith using the kingdom as a sacrifice to fuel all the God Hand coming to Earth. Guts' story, though, I think is going to determine on if he is still going to fight. If he is going to fight, then he's going to need yet another power-up, which I think will come in the hands of the Dragon Slayer is already fairly attuned to the astral realm and destroying astral things. So if Skull Knight does give it the same sort of actuation treatment, like maybe they melt down the sword of actuation and coat the Dragon Slayer in it. And you could even have it be like, given the Dragon Slayer's larger size, the Bailets aren't as concentrated, but that is made up for by the fact that this sword has bathed in the blood of hundreds of astral beings. It could possibly, when mixed with the Sword of Actuation abilities, surpass the Sword of Actuation. But that's just my opinion. I'm gonna stop talking now. So yeah. If you enjoy this video, make sure to hit like, subscribe if you're new here. Comment below what your thoughts on this chapter was. Maybe you agree with some of the stuff I said. If so, let me know. If not, let me know. Let me know what you think is going to happen in the series from here on out. It's going to be very interesting to see. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And until next time, stay safe, have fun, and read more manga. Okay, guys. Bye.